Welcome to the English with Kirsty podcast from www.englishwithkirsty.com. Here I'll be sharing with you tips, information and other learning resources so that you can improve your business English. Hi everybody and welcome back to the English with Kirsty podcast. Today we have another returning guest like last week. If you want to hear our first conversation, you can go back to episode 230. But today I have Alice or Alice, however you want to introduce yourself, with me again. Welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you, Kirsty. Yeah, you can call me Alice, like in English, or Alice, as I would say it in French, because I'm French.
Yeah, welcome back. And we suggested that we might do another episode last year because at the time you were in the process of finishing some training, and I thought it would be interesting to talk about that in relation to language learning. So what was it that you actually did? What was the training that you did?
Yeah, it was a certification which is called Neurolanguage Coach certification. It's kind of a way of approaching language learning that has been coined by Rachel Paling, which is she's really intent on delivering, passing on languages on the most effective way and in a way that is gentle to your brain, using neurosciences, what we know of the brain today, thanks to neurosciences, and using all that knowledge and the coaching approach to deliver the language and engage people in their own journey of learning a new language.
Okay, so your thinking behind this was that when you finish this training, it would help you in your work. As maybe you could explain what you do for people who haven't heard the first episode. How do you help people with their French? What do you do?
Yeah, so I coach people to learn and improve their French, to be and to feel like they are themselves in French, because many people want to learn the language. Maybe they have to learn the language because they settled in a French-speaking country, but they have much difficulty in being at ease, comfortable, and accepting that they are not perfect, that they are not natives, and they really strive to learn the language. And it can be some kind of painful way to learn. So I coach them to overcome those difficult moments and to learn the language so they can finally be comfortable and feel free to be who they are in French also.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because it's a journey. When we were talking before we started recording, I was talking about something that I did in German, which is my easiest additional language to communicate in, and how I still, when I was I attended an event and I was speaking German and I was thinking, oh, you could have said this, you could have done that in English, it would have been different. And that's I do most of the time feel like that I am myself in German, but I think there's always more you can do. It's a journey. Maybe you never entirely get there because we're always discovering new things about ourselves anyway. So it's like a journey of, I really think that learning a language is a journey of self-discovery anyway, because you're always discovering new things about yourself.
Yeah,
But I think
totally.
there's the kind of way to do that maybe, because whilst on one hand, I believe that if you want to learn anything, then you have to put some effort in, you have to try, you have to be committed to learning, and you have to be willing to go on that journey and to learn. But at the same time, I think there's probably a kinder way to do it. Some people like more time working harder isn't necessarily working smarter if you're not doing things that don't work for you or that just don't work. I've seen people with some really interesting strategies that are kind of setting them up to fail. So
Hmm.
how can we be kinder to our brains when we're learning? How can we look after ourselves at the same time?
Oh, as you were saying, it's never-ending process all your life, I think, to discover how to be gentle to your brain, to who you are, because you will change. You know, everything changes. So you will change during your life, and I think the most gentle thing to do, the kindest thing to do is to be aware of who you are, how do you feel, and to accept that things are going to evolve and to adapt to that. So I think, yeah, the most important things is to maybe be more aware of who you are, because we are in our childhood, when we are at school, and then when we start working in a company with other people, we have many exterior, external outputs, and many people tell you what to do. Um, um, they want to know if you're good, if you're okay, but they don't really ask you how do you feel.
Mm.
And there are so many things that are external, and I think I mean, at least I and my generation, we haven't been taught to really listen to ourselves, and I think that listening to ourselves is the first step to accept who you are, and then to make things that are how do you say, that are suitable for you, because it's the way you are, and this is who you are, and then you can find what is good for you because you know who you are, you know.
Yeah, and that's the nice thing as adults. Maybe like if you're in compulsory education, you don't have so much choice and so much autonomy. If we're talking about learning a language when you're an adult, you do. You can choose which, it's not about which activities do you like because maybe you don't like a certain activity because it's harder for you, but I mean which things bring you the best results, which not the goals that you want to achieve, but the way that you get there. We have autonomy to decide how we're gonna learn a certain skill or develop a certain skill. There are so many different ways. And I think it's really important to know if you're doing a one-to-one course or if you're just learning on your own, what is going to help you to get there,
Hmm.
not
Yeah.
necessarily faster, but in a less painful way, like in a more enjoyable way, because we've said before that it should be fun. So what works for you? So I guess,
Hmm.
would you say this changed the way that you work with people? Are there things that you do now that you didn't do before you went on the course because you learned new skills?
Yeah, yeah. Actually, I had trained myself right when I started to teach and to be a teacher back in 2016. I think it was obvious for me that as we learn with our brains, I needed to know how the brain works. And I read that super book about neural learning, which is different from the what I spoke just before. And in that book, Neural Learning for Training, it's a French book, so it might be, and
Okay.
it doesn't have a translation in English. But for French readers and speakers, you can read the book, and on this book. There was this quote, this image given by a researcher, I think back in the 1950, no, maybe more like 70s, 80s, when people more in the US began to dig into how does the brain actually work. And I think her name, if I'm not mistaken, is Leslie Chart. And she said something like, learning without knowing how the brain works is like um, uh, making a glove without knowing the shape of a hand. And I
Okay.
thought it was so powerful, the image from it was like, oh wow, I love that. Yeah, of course, I need to know how the brain works, and how to use our brain to learn, because it's the tool we have. We have many tools when we learn, but many things go through our brain. However, I want to insist that many things go through our body as well, and we can learn with our body, but many things go just through our brain. So yeah, with that book, I already understood, the importance of, as you said before, like intention, motivation, owning your own journey, your learning, knowing what activities are good in your learning, in your way of learning. Being very clear about your motivation. When are you going to use the language you're learning? That kind of things. And I became more aware of the role of emotions, for example, in the process of learning, during a session with your trainer, with your coach, with your teacher, however you you name them.
We have that
Um,
discussion.
but just the emotions during the sessions, the emotions you're experiencing when you do practice your language, because you live in a foreign country, and then if you're in France and you go to a flower shop, and you have an experience of exchanging, and there are so many emotions here on those experiences, that it is really important to be aware of the emotions you are going through, and maybe to take a step back, to reflect on how it impacted the way you were, your cognitive skills at that moment. So it was kind of, I think it was really, it was really interesting for me to understand the role of emotions. And emotions, for example, also do have a role in memorizing. It makes so much sense, to think that you're learning a language, you have to memorize the things. How many times, I know that you are coaching people too, how many times do your students just tell, oh yeah, I know that I know, but I was just incapable of getting the information from my brain. I know that we studied it. I know how to say that word,
I
or
have the
to
same problem
structure,
as a
to
learner.
phrase, Yeah, and I do too. I understand that when I'm speaking another language, sometimes I know the information, but I can't get it back, actively at the moment I need it. So it is really important to understand how to memorize better, and to be able to train to memorize, because our brain is something that we can train, and that's the beautiful thing about it, is that we can train our brain, being gentle, not like over exercising our brain. And I think that the language journey is better, healthier, more enjoyable if you get the right balance between using your brain and exercising your brain, and also taking care of that beautiful tool.
So you mean like to try and promote more of the positive emotions in the session?
Yeah, definitely promoting positive emotions, but also, um, um, how do you say that? Like, um, I think that as a coach, my role is also to take care of the emotions that my coachee is experiencing, and to name that those emotions, and to receive those emotions. Like if someone I now recall um, a conversation with a coachee. She comes into the session and she tells, "Oh, Alice, I really need to tell you something. I had a terrible experience with my French. I felt so ashamed. It was horrible, and she had all those very negative feelings,
Mm.
about that, and she needed to express them and to tell them, and my role is also to say, okay, I hear you, I'm listening to you, and yes, you were having those emotions. What exactly were those emotions? Was it frustration? Was it, just like naming, receiving those negative emotions? And we need to be aware of those emotions. I think positive emotions are great. They are a powerful um, tool, but you always, there's no need to ignore negative emotions, because then you can't take care of them. And from the negative emotions, you can also build some new strategies. And with that coachee, for example, the experience, that story she told me, where she had been so frustrated, she felt so bad in that experience of speaking French with a colleague of hers, we could build a strategy that was suited to her. About, okay, next time you face that kind of situation, what strategies can you implement to calm down, make your brain quiet, and to maximize your potential at that time. Okay, and we found some strategies, and for example, for her, it was something that I couldn't have. I couldn't have thought myself of that strategy, because it was not me, but it was her. It was just picking a pencil in her bag, just to feel more confident, to have that pencil in her hand. She told me that it was that yes, it's going to help her to feel more quiet, and to take some time, and to feel more powerful at the moment of speaking French, for example. So from negative emotions, we got to new strategies to implement for the future experiences. And of course, during the session, um, she could she could express those negative emotions, because there was trust, and there is trust in our session. There is also very good moments, because on the sessions before, we could have some fun, and to laugh, to express positive things as well. So, this is a mix. And Rachel Paling, who I mentioned before, who built the neurolanguage coaching method. She doesn't like the word method, but we're going to say the method. Rachel Paling always says that coaching is like a dance with our coaches, and we need to dance with our coachee during the session, to lead them to where they want to go, and to so we are like dancers and we dance together with fun, with positive emotions, but also negative emotions sometimes, or, these kind of things are really helpful, I think, in the relation and in the journey of our students.
Yeah, because I think if you don't name them, they can get bigger. So like some of the I was interested to hear you mention shame because people talk about frustration a lot, but I was having a conversation with someone a couple of weeks ago about feeling really ashamed that um in a situation where you maybe can't express yourself very well, or that you want people to know how you really are. And if you don't quite have the words to do that yet, it can feel that there's like a line where frustration can cross into shame and can prevent people from doing things or from trying. But the other thing is, it's like we are not the emotion, we are experiencing the emotion at that particular time.
Hmm.
But it's about, naming it. I feel this. You don't have to name it to the person that you're with, but it's about
No.
being honest with yourself, because if you don't, you can begin to tell yourself stories like, I can't do this, or I'll never be, like if you start believing the feelings that you have when you experience this emotion, that's just like at a point in time you are experiencing a negative emotion. But I think at the same time we can um dig a bit deeper, like why do you feel like that? Or,
Hmm.
not just what happened, but why does that particular situation have such a big effect on you? Like
Hmm. What did it trigger
yeah, what's the
in
trigger?
you?
What do you think will
Hmm.
happen?
Hmm.
What do you, if you feel ashamed, what are you ashamed of? Or what do you think the other people like, to dissect it to the point where you just understand your own reactions better,
Hmm.
and then you can, A, like you said, plan strategies, but B, also look at the things that you tell yourself and make sure that they're true, because sometimes
Hmm.
when you experience negative emotions, you don't tell yourself things that are true. You tell yourself things that you feel, and if you start believing them, they can become your reality, even if they're not necessarily true. So I think
Hmm.
it's I don't know how sometimes in England we have this tendency to ignore emotions, like I'm fine, everything's falling apart, but I'm fine, everything's great,
Hmm.
that, and that it's good to be positive and to try and find solutions. But I think culturally we have had a tendency to ignore emotions where they could have actually been helpful to process them and
Hmm.
move on, rather than having this big like box of
Yeah,
undealt with
and
emotions in the attic somewhere that nobody ever looks at, but it's still there.
yeah, no, totally. And sometimes I think also that when you're ignoring the negative emotions, you're like pushing yourself, like, no, no, I can do it. I can do it. So I will. And, and you're like running to achieve something and pushing yourself to achieve something. Whereas sometimes you can accept that, okay, for now, you're ashamed of something. You can dig into the why of that, but also accept it and accept that you are maybe not ready now. And that, okay, the time will come, but until I process it, just I don't push myself and I don't put myself in awkward situations and like stepping out of your comfort zone, for example. Okay, that there are some people who can deal with uncertainty and challenges, but there are other people who just need more time to enlarge the comfort zone. And it's not like stepping out of your comfort zone. It's like enlarge your comfort zone, but little by little processing from the inside towards outside.
And sometimes it's about finding some steps between, like if you want to speak at a big conference in front of thousands of people, like start with a smaller speaking engagement. Or
Hmm.
if you find, I definitely find online things easier than face to face. So if I wanted to do something a bit more challenging, I would probably do something more challenging online first, because that is like a step between what I'm doing now and maybe something more difficult in a face-to-face event. So I think it's like if you have something like a big goal,
Hmm.
it's great to work towards it, but are there some steps that you can, like some smaller milestones in between where you are now and where you want to be, that you can identify so that then it's easier to get there because it doesn't seem like such a big leap from from where you are now to the first
Yeah.
milestone.
Yeah. No, no, exactly, exactly. And getting prepared little by little by small steps and some stages. And then the moment you have to face the big challenge you aimed at first, well, you feel a bit more prepared because there are much uncertainty that you already dealt with. So the uncertainty is reduced and you can face the challenge, but not like discovering 100% of it on the moment. So I think, yeah, preparing is I think we underestimate the power of preparation. You know, sometimes we think when we learn a language. I have many coaches that tell me, "Oh, yeah, that was really hard." And okay, and I ask, "How did you prepare?" No, 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 I don't prepare because in real life you can't prepare. Yeah, that's true, but preparing some stuff make the moments you can't be prepared like easier because yes, you've prepared before, and so I think that um, preparing is not a waste of time. I really want to pass on that message. Being prepared and taking the time to prepare and to think what you're going to tell and how you're going to tell it, the vocabulary that you need, the structure. Um, sometimes also when you're preparing, you can visualize the situation and think of the person you will be exchanging with. And maybe you can like predict what the people might ask. And then when the moment comes, well, maybe the person will actually ask you the questions that you had prepared, maybe to make an example and make things more concrete. If you know that you're going to visit an apartment because you need to rent a flat, an apartment, well, you get prepared. You know how the apartment is. Even in your own language, you will try to think, okay, what do I need to know? What kind of information do I need to know? The bills, the electricity, water,
Mm.
what are the costs, everything. So you want some information, right? And then maybe, you can think of what the real estate agent will ask from you, and then you can get prepared. Maybe the person will ask, okay, and what's your situation? Do you work? What are your revenues? And, just thinking of the questions the person might ask makes you much more prepared when you hear the question. And then it's not, yeah, it's not totally new to you and to your brain.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think like some people try to rehearse exact answers, but if those exact questions don't come up, you have a problem. But I think doing it this way helps because it's the vocabulary. If you don't know the word for a, I don't know, electricity bill or something like that, you can find it. So it's like thinking what areas do we need to talk about? Do I have any vocabulary gaps? Do I have any questions? Because sometimes, like if when people go to the doctors, it's quite you don't have much time, and so it's
Hmm.
good to, even in your first language, to think, okay, what do I want from this appointment? What do I want to know? Because if you get there and you haven't thought about it, then you maybe lose your chance, and here it'll take you a long time to get another appointment. But it's thinking it's not it is important to be spontaneous, and yeah, you never know what someone's going to say, but I think if it's a specific thing that you're going to do, like you're saying, think about the vocabulary that you'll need and think about how you would ask your questions or what's important to you, or
mm,
you can have a conversation in your mind with your dog, or like to go through things. It doesn't matter if it doesn't happen like that, but it means that you
mm,
have had the chance. That's why I do the journaling in other languages too, because I think if I can write, then hopefully I can speak. It's like teaching. For me, it's that step between. I find, especially in my third language, speaking is hard at the moment because it's the newest. But for me, the process of writing helps with speaking because I'm having to form the sentences. There's less pressure for me then because nobody knows and nobody's watching.
mm,
Speaking is a completely different skill to writing, but formulating sentences is the skill that's stopping me from speaking, not the actual speaking part. It's the fact that I can't make the sentences fast as I would like to,
mm,
and as complicated
mm,
sentences as I would like to. So for me, the idea of writing helps because it's kind of soothing for me not to be under pressure, but at the same time, my brain is making sentences in the other language, and that helps. So like
yeah, it's a
sometimes,
creation process.
yeah,
The both are creation processes, or when you are speaking and when you're writing, but it's something that comes from your brain, and it's very active. So I totally understand what what you're saying, and sometimes you can do both, because when you write, then you can make it oral, and you can read aloud,
yeah,
and then so you are a bit prepared to how it sounds, and your brain gets the information both on the creation process, on reading the sentence you've just written, and on listening to yourself pronouncing, and also the way you mobilize your mouth, your tongue, and all the process, the body, where the body enters in action, So I think, yeah, this is a great tip when you're a bit afraid of speaking. Yeah, like going step by step, writing, then oralizing. Hmm.
it's breaking it down to see what the real problem is. Because if I could say, oh, I don't like speaking, it's not actually I don't like speaking. I don't like feeling incompetent because I haven't got the words that I need when I want them. It's
Hmm.
not the speaking. And I think with other people, they say they don't like listening, but it's not that they don't like the anxiety that comes from maybe not being able to understand what the other
Hmm.
person said. It's
Mhm.
like, I think it's really good to be clear about if we're talking about things that we find more difficult in another language, what specifically is it about that task or that situation that stresses you out? Because three people could not like speaking and they have different, like some people might not like pronunciation or others um might not like being the center of attention, which actually has nothing to do with language, but you know what I mean? If you can
Hmm.
really drill down to what would you say for somebody who finds listening difficult? It's not really something I struggle with as much, so I want to not only use my examples, but so for somebody that finds that quite stressful being in situations where they have to listen and responding isn't a problem, but understanding what other people say
Hmm.
when there's no subtitles in real life conversation. What would you say to them? Just to
Yeah. Actually, once more, I think it's about preparation. So it's like training yourself to listen, and identifying the reasons why you struggle understanding when you are listening. For example, in French, there might be something that English students could use, because in French, for example, one of the most difficult things is that when French speaker speaks, it's very difficult to sequence. And to identify the words that the person is using, because we are connecting one word with another, to because it's the rhythm, it's the melody, it's the
Mm.
music of French, you know, and this is very hard for many French students to because they can't figure out the words, and if you don't understand the words, you think that you don't understand the signification. So, for example, it's very important if the person identifies that it's more a problem of phonetics, then you can do some phonetic activities. You can train with phonetics, understanding the melody of the language, for example, and this will help you a lot in your understanding. Another example, for example, you can identify that okay, I don't understand, but if you dig a little bit more, you identify that it's because you don't know exactly the topic. What is the person speaking about? And of course, if you don't know, even if in your own language, if you don't know anything about that topic, it will be super hard to understand because there will be some um, um, you know, some blacks, some holes uh, in in what the person is saying. So, for example, here the um, the solution or the first step would be to increase your general understanding, your general knowledge about a culture, about an event. You know, like getting more informed on a specific topic will help you a lot to understand. So, you know, I
Yeah.
think this would be my advice is like to take a step back and reflect on the reasons why I don't understand. And as you said, for example, what people don't like is the anxiety of not understanding. So maybe if there are so many emotions at the moment of when you are listening, and this is preventing you from understanding, so maybe then you can work on more like emotion control solutions. How do you make your brain a bit calmer? How do you quiet your thoughts at the moment of listening and understanding? So you make place for understanding and not just being full of emotions and thoughts of, oh, I don't understand, and why is that person speaking so quick, and oh, French are always speaking very quick. You know, and having all those thoughts won't help. Whereas just taking a deep breath and trying to focus on the general idea and not trying to understanding every single words, you know, those can be also tips, tricks to help your understanding.
Yeah, that is a real big I guess a mistake or misconception that I mean with if you're speaking or writing, you do have to make a complete sentence, but when you're listening or reading, you don't need to understand 100% in order to understand what's going on. If it's, I don't know,
Hmm.
something really relevant like your contract or something and you want to know all the details, then fine. But generally, we don't need to understand 100% of the words. And it's true, if you have this fight or flight response, like there's a lion, I need to run, like you're not going to be able to speak or listen properly because you know you're too busy thinking about where the lion's going to come from and where you're going to go. So it's you're
Hmm.
taking resources away from yourself that you would need to engage in that situation if you and it's hard. I mean, I know that sometimes these responses happen and it's very hard to focus again and to take a deep breath and to take the time to get calm again. But you're right. Again, this is nothing in a way to do with language. It's about managing
Hmm.
our responses to things and and how we do that and how we do that is different for everyone. And the example you gave of your coachee wouldn't work for me. That wouldn't help me, but it worked for her, and that's the important thing. So it's finding the thing that works for you and experimenting. But I think it's sometimes we shut down too quickly and say, "Oh, this is hard. I hate this activity," without really looking at, okay, what specifically is hard, and then what can we do about it?
Hmm. Yeah, no, totally. And yeah, it's about again knowing how you work as a whole, your brain, your body, to understand the emotions, maybe the reasons why you react that way. And also, I think, it made me think when you were speaking of sometimes we focused much on I need to understand, but we are understanding in a conversation, for example, there is someone else here, and you can express things if you want. You can express things like, sorry, I don't understand quite well. Oh, I didn't pick just that word, and I think it's important for me to answer your question, or just saying, okay, I'm really sorry, but now I don't know, I'm tired, and I know that when I'm tired, it's more difficult for me to understand. So can you speak just a bit more slowly? And sometimes you can involve the person you're talking to in that process. And I think it helps remembering that yes, you are not a native, and the person knows it. So there's no need to act as if you were a native. You can just express the fact that, and remember to the person that you are not a native, but you are doing the most to make the conversation go, at the end, and to share things and to answer the questions and everything. But I think also we can also allow ourselves to remember to that person that you're not speaking in your mother tongue, and yes, it is difficult, and a conversation implies two persons, so maybe we can make both an effort.
Yeah, and I think certainly, I don't want to generalize too much, but I've seen often people who only speak one language forget this because they don't know how it feels to communicate in another language,
Hmm.
and they don't know how it feels when people use maybe regional expressions or things that don't actually make sense. If you stop and ask them to explain it, they well, it means like some of the stuff we say doesn't make a lot of sense. But also when you were saying that, I was thinking of a situation where somebody shared, so it was a private conversation, so it was an article, and I first of all I wrote, oh, that's interesting, because it was, but then I thought that's not what I would say. I would say that's interesting. I understand most of it, but I don't understand this point. So I changed it and I said that. And she was happy to explain it. I think people like to help, but they can't if they don't know that you need help. Or,
Hmm.
a lot of the time, if it's especially if it's like a positive interaction with a friend or a colleague, or generally people, we may feel a sense of shame if we don't know something, but
Hmm.
it's not really something. What you can be ashamed of is like staying ignorant and choosing not to learn, but not knowing something isn't something to be ashamed of. It's if you're open to learn new things and discover new things and you ask for help, then a lot of the time people are really happy to help when they have the knowledge that you need.
Yeah, yeah. It reminds me of something a non-French speaker told in my podcast. She's called Lisbeth, and she told me that sometimes she needed to remind the person who she's speaking that French is only her fourth language. And sometimes
Mm.
when you see that the person is not understanding what it means to speak a foreign language, sometimes you can allow yourself just a little, reflection, a little remark of, yeah, this is only my third or fourth language. So,
I think that's true, but I also think for some of us, we need to tell ourselves before we can tell anyone else.
yeah,
Like that process
totally.
starts with you. And for me,
Mm,
I was like, I should know this. I've been doing this for 1 year now. I should, like, it's totally unreasonable sometimes, but um, like
mm.
it's true. You should be able to say that to other people, but you should also be able to accept it for yourself
Yeah.
first. So
Totally, totally. Yeah, and once again, knowing who you are, your limits, and accepting those limits. It doesn't mean that accepting the limit, um, it doesn't make the limit impossible to, I don't know how to say this. You can go, uh,
it's temporary. It's not going to be like that forever. It's just
yeah, exactly. So, but accepting that limit makes you more aware of it, and maybe you will be able to find solutions, or but at that moment it can be really relieving as well. Just to, yeah, a coach of mine just told me yesterday, she was like, "Oh, someone told on LinkedIn, she had read that post on LinkedIn where a French teacher said, um, you're, you will never speak like a native. And this is something that we don't, as coach teachers, we don't allow ourselves to say like, no, you won't be speaking like a native. You're not a native. This is not your mother tongue, and maybe it's okay. You can work on your pronunciation. You can work on your vocabulary. You can work on the structure of the way you speak, but you're not native, and that's okay. You will improve, but maybe your goal is not to be a native. And my coach, he told me, I felt so relieved that somebody else gave me the authorization to not pursue that goal of being a native. Okay, that's okay.
I always find it interesting when people pursue that goal because so many native speakers or first language speakers of whatever language speak their own first language so badly. Like it's not just,
You're so
I,
right.
I see things that people have written in some different languages and I think, wow, there's a lot of mistakes there. Not because they're learning a language, but because it's even if we're talking about if it's your first language, there are lots of different levels of being able to use that language. But yeah, I think it's a trap that people can fall into,
Hmm,
and I think it's unhelpful because you'll always be. I don't know. I think it's good to see people who are further down a certain path than we are and to feel inspired by them. But if you're always measuring yourself from a point of lack, I'm not as good as that person.
hmm,
I'm not as good as a native speaker. I don't know. I think you're always setting yourself up to fail if you look like that.
hmm. Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Comparing, comparison is poison, and you have so sometimes, yeah, comparing to others um, make you forget who you are, how you learn, what's good for you. So, and I know this is important for you to always stress this, like what's good for you. So sometimes
mm.
comparing to other people make you forget that their recipe might not be the way you will achieve your goal,
And
because
it's
this is
also
not the way you are working.
yeah, and they may have like if you're comparing yourself to someone else, maybe their vocabulary is better, but their grammar isn't, so they make more mistakes. They are more fluent, but they are less accurate. Or it's nobody is 100% better in all areas most of the time. It's like
Mm,
it's all there are so many variables, and what is even better. Um, Different people have different priorities anyway in what's important to them. So. Yeah, it's a dangerous, I think with anything, if you're a business owner, like comparison, you can, oh, this person has this many followers, or this person is better known, but you don't know their story, and you also don't know what they might be struggling with. But at the same time, if they're not going where you're going, it doesn't matter. Like, you've got your own journey, your own the things that you want or are going to do. If you have a business, for example, it doesn't matter where someone else is going. If they're going in another direction, it's not your problem. It's not your business.
Yeah.
It's more important to focus on what you want to achieve.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and we go back to motivation and the intention you put, and motivation is really personal. So it's about finding what is your motivation and your intention, your goals, and being very clear about that will help your brain to learn, because you give it intention and something that's true, real for you.
Yeah, and if you're having a day where the motivation disappeared, do something that remind you why you're doing it. Like, if you really like music, or if you really like I don't know, something that feeds your motivation for the language. You can't only do these things, because there are other things that you have to learn and do as well. But if you are lacking motivation, sometimes it helps to just remind yourself why you're doing it, and why you enjoy it, why it's important to you, something that will give you a positive emotion, because it's connected to your why for learning the other language.
Yeah,
Which is
totally.
hard if you're just told you have to. You're like, you have to use this. But if the motivation isn't coming from within you, then it is much harder to maintain it. But if it is, then there are things that you can do to keep it going.
Yeah, totally.
So just at the end, is there any like final tip or final piece of advice that you want to give to the listeners today?
Oh, that is a real difficult question.
I say the hardest one for
Well,
last.
yeah, um, I think it's just repeating how we are our most strict and severe judge, and that
Yeah.
sometimes we need to quiet a bit that internal judge in our brain, and we can listen, but we are not obliged to do what that person, that little person, that little voice, judgmental voice is saying to us, and that we can just let it go and letting flow.
Yeah, I think that's a good place to end, to think about that, and to think about when we do that as well, because sometimes it becomes such a learned behavior that we don't even notice that we're listening to this inner critic, this inner judgmental voice. And so just to be present enough to recognize when that's happening, so that we can make a choice in terms of what we want to do about it.
Exactly.
So yeah, thank you for coming back on the podcast. It's good to see you again.
Always a pleasure. Thank you, Kirsty.
Yeah, have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
And the listeners too.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the English with Kirsty podcast. If you have any questions or comments, my email address is kirsty@englishwithkirsty.com, or you can go to www.englishwithkirsty.com/podcast, where you'll find information about the individual episodes.